Very exciting times. I'm sure you guys saw the Stargate stuff. We'll get into that. I want to start off just by taking a quick poll. By a show of hands, how many of you think in the next few years you will have a robot in your home helping you out? Sizable number, actually. A very awake crowd at the end of the day. On the frontier. Do I have this is my clicker? Perfect. Quick background on myself before we dive in. Dropped out of college. I started a manufacturing company out of the hemp bill passed. We started my garage and then moved to a warehouse. We did white label, private label, hired all my old fraternity friends, and then sold that after growing it up. After that, I wanted to be there for my younger self. Basically, I felt like there was not enough of a reach out to find me as a young entrepreneur and innovator. I really liked Teal Fellowship's model. I met Jim O'Neill, he's the guy who helped start that. He became a mentor of mine. And I thought deeply about where the future's headed. And we said, okay, AI, robotics, crypto. That is the mind, body, spirit of the future. These are going to be the big domains. This is going to be the largest amount of value. And so, basically, I was very upset. I was getting recruited for football in college. I had, most amount of sacks in a decade. But I also had great ACT scores. I had perfect in math and science, but no one was trying to recruit my brain. And there's a lot more value in innovation than in football. So what we launched was essentially a Teal Fellowship focused on India market and started recruiting the genius minds out there. We run the biggest hackathons, over 250,000 developers, and then from there we would select people to go take those startups and build them and grow them. As we were doing that, last year I presented here, go back one, there we go. And this man, Ashish, I want to give a shout out to Ashish. Stand up real quick, Ashish. Basically, last year, after giving my talk, Ashish came up to me and he said, this is going to be one of the most important meetings of your life. He said it right away, and it came to be very, very true. So I appreciate his foresight and wisdom on it. And he invested in the company. He came on and we went out to India together and he gave me the prompt. What is the biggest thing that we are not doing in terms of where the future is going? And this time we hadn't done anything in robotics. I knew this space was going to be big. So that was my response. The lowest cost robot on the market in terms of simple mobile manipulators was $25,000. Like, that doesn't make sense. These parts have to cost much less. So we went ahead and we sent the video to every manufacturer out there to go try and figure out, can we get it at a much lower cost? The answer was yes. And then as I dove into this more, and we got the first robots in Sunnyvale in our office, and I started diving more into the blueprint, I realized, you know what? This is where most of the value capture is going to be, as Jensen just gave his speech on this. AI is very replicatable. I can switch one model in for another. The cost of open source models we're seeing compete and become just as good as what ChatGPT has produced. And so the real value capture, the thing you can't quickly switch in, is in hardware. This is the next big domain. This is where a lot of money will flow into. That's the main takeaway I want to give here to everyone, is that 99.9% of people are not predicting the speed and the scale of robotics on a wide enough basis. It'll be much bigger, it'll happen much faster. So, as we already know, in the industrial space, robots, for Amazon itself, they're adding more robots to their staff than humans. We saw the Stargate project just launched. We see all the lab leaders talking about AGI happening in the next few years, white collar work being automated. We live in a very, very interesting and exponential time. SoftBank CEO says this will be the golden age of America. I say we're just entering the golden age in general. And Another person related this $500 billion Stargate AI infrastructure project to the Manhattan Project. The truth of the matter is, the Manhattan Project cost $2 billion. Now, $40 billion in today's terms, it's above 10x of the Manhattan Project. This is very unprecedented. The dot-com era didn't have this. It's for a good reason. We are externalizing intelligence. We're externalizing all faculties of our ability to produce and change the material world. I want to dive into a scenario real quick. You go home, maybe later tonight, you have a kitchen there, you cook a dinner, you leave the place a mess, your kids are playing, the house is a mess, you throw your clothes on the ground, and you're super tired. You don't really want to clean it up, you just want to go to bed. So, you fall asleep, you're like, oh, I gotta do it tomorrow. But then you wake up, and while you were sleeping, it turns out you walk out, the house is clean. The dishes are done, everything's put away, the toys are put away, and something was happening during the night. You happen to have an autonomous function coming and doing all of these tasks for you. That will be a beautiful luxury thing. It's funny going out to India and seeing lower middle class India lives a better service lifestyle than upper middle class Americans. Labor's so cheap. Coffee's outside your door, your clothes are folded outside your door. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful time to be alive. So, I want to take another poll here. If you never needed to worry about dishes, laundry, or cleaning up after yourself, we'll start at higher and bring it down just to see where people are at in their range. Let's start at, would you pay $1,500 a month to never need to worry about that? Raise your hand if that's where your target is. All right, let's go to $1,000 a month. Never need to clean your house again. You know it's just gonna get done, your dishes are gonna get done. Let's move down to $500 a month. All right, there we go. That's where the hands are coming. And how about $200 a month? Even more, great. It will happen, yes. Once the robots build the robots, especially. There's obviously a lot of different tasks in the whole domestic space. Dishes and laundry, a main pain point, happen to also be way easier than most fine-tuned tasks, but later down the line it will be changing your oil, doing anything you might be doing. The robotics household market, TAM alone, and what we're seeing right now, this is our $40,000 unit. This was the best kind of we could get from a dual arm perspective off the shelf. Single arm, we got a much better cost and beat the current state of the art. And this pitch isn't about open droids. I'll be talking about that more in depth tomorrow. I'm just trying to give an educative overview on the whole robotics space and kind of how you should be looking at it, what companies I think will be dominating, and how I think about why they'll be dominating. Part of that is, well, continually, the actual material costs, the actuators that go into these arms, they just went down 10x in this past year. So the advancements in decreasing the actual costs and underlying technology is just rapidly changing right now. And if we imagine on a 5-year lease, as you would lease a car, as there are nearly as many cars or more cars than humans on the planet, and there's many predictions for that with robots, we just imagine the 200 million households that have over $100,000 median income on board to that $200 and $20 a month price point, which is a $12,000 unit. That's a $2.4 trillion market alone. Just the domestic space, not including hospitality, healthcare, retail. And that's where, there's just a lack of analyst foresight. And you ask ChatGPT to predict it by 2030, and it says the entire robotics market will be $220 billion to $170 billion. And you can see from the right above that doesn't add up with the actual first principles metrics. Luckily, when you ask the model to not take humans into account and reason from first principles, it does give the $2.5 trillion market size. Then you have Elon. Elon says 1,000 or a quadrillion is too small because GDP is measured by capita x productivity, and a robot, capita meaning human, is just like a human in terms of being able to change the material world. This is an uncorking. Since one robot produces as much value as 1.5 robots, and it can build itself, there's this sort of flywheel effect and potential. So the same foresight that all the analysts lacked while NVIDIA was going down 2022, I believe is here with robotics in a big way. Obviously, the mind precedes the body. AI's potential and capabilities unlocks robotic potential and capabilities. So the massive speed up rate, the multi-decade shift, is what we saw. This is a prediction market slide. It's called Metaculus. It's what a lot of the nerds use. And even there, the prediction for AGI 2022 was around 2047. Once the release of ChatGPT came and people recognized that we had cracked some code with the transformer training foundation, now the prediction is 2026 for artificial general intelligence, meaning anything a human can do, the AI can do as well. And that obviously changes a lot of things. Investment analysts gets worse as we go through exponential changes because humans are linear thinkers. It's called exponential foresight failure, something like that. And so one of the other things that happens here is the incumbents at play who started their companies before 2022 thought they had multi-decade to scale up. And so they started with this humanoid model with more industrial, with higher payloads, rather than thinking about how to enter domestic market. We'll get into more of some of those pieces later. And you'll see the scale plan is actually quite slow, even when we know Elon predicts way quicker than he's able to perform on. And that'll be 10,000 units this year that they want to produce. And those units can't actually go and do the task because they're humanoid level, and I don't think, you've never seen an Optimus bend over and pick something up. Even with teleoperation. Teleoperation is what's happening here. A human is controlling the bot right now. That's the intermediary step before full autonomy. And that's a multi-billion-dollar market alone. Dive into that a little bit later as well. You see Jensen with the whole lineup. These people who kind of started, which I think a little bit of the wrong blueprint, and I think it's opened up this beachhead. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's the big key here. All the robots we use today have wheels for a reason. They're easier, they're more reliable. And while I do think the leg future is real, it's more about who gets the momentum, who enters the market and starts getting all of the user base, getting the brand, etc., in order to go dominate with legs. So one of those faculties that really opened up a lot of value that has been captured, even if AI did not get better at all from today forward, there would be a lot of robotics advancement and deployment. And that's because human level vision was cracked. So now anything of the kind of information that I can grab by being a human in some space is very useful. Now a robot with a little camera on it, it can feed that information in as well. Thank you. And so one of those places is just in the telepresence place. This is one place I think there's going to be a big role for decreasing nursing costs. There's a constant lack of supply of good nurses for something like rehabs. 80% of what they do is the same doing vitals every day. And one of the ways that I can prove to you that this market is lacking is that website shows you every single telepresence bot out there today. You'll see the average cost is like $4,500. On the right side, one of our team members, that's their $250 unit. One of the reasons it's so much less is we don't need LiDAR, because we now have computer level vision that can just use these sort of more normal cameras in order to navigate spaces. And the other crazy thing is that no telepresence bot out there today, which is just a wheeled bot with an iPad or a camera, none of them can open a door. None of them even added the little lever latch. You know, and in a rehabs are ADA standard, so the doors all have the same sort of lever, same height, and that's going to be a big place because robots don't need any certification to administer vitals. So it can roll into the rooms, and deliver someone their pills for the day, and it can allow them to use blood pressure tests, oximeter. So that's a very big beachhead that hasn't been dominated. The annual nursing cost is around $400 billion. We can imagine that this could decrease the staff load at rehabs by 80%. So that is a main routine task. So diving deeper into what that means for this industry, it means new players who come out with this new knowledge are able to really take advantage of going and hitting market today, having clientele today, having revenue today, having in-production knowledge, having video and brands start to get out there in order to front-run the other incumbents who have been relatively well-funded, although I think we're still very early to the actual wave of robotics funding that is going to come. So the beachhead really changed from the idea that it was going to be industrial and repetitive tasks that would first be the thing of deployment to now rehabs, domestic, retail, restaurant, etc. And then from the actual training side, from moving from the state of teleoperation where you have a human doing this, from where there was a world of tons of data with text and image and video online, the data really doesn't exist to train the embodied AI models. We simply never recorded this. And that was a really interesting thing. We just did CES and unveiled this here. This is one of our new units that we just got in a few days before CES even. And Google DeepMind came to us. Now my friend was with me, who's a director at a big AI training company called Invisible, sells to DeepMind and XAI and Anthropic, and they were like, they came to you trying to get your relationship, because in the whole AI training space, which is this multi-billion-dollar market, it is competitive. You know, they're the ones really fighting for the deals. And so that was an interesting sort of subjective experience, which just followed the natural thing which you can recognize here, which is just lots of text, lots of video data. We don't have the data of actually how to move these arms and have direct recorded. Where are we gonna get it? It's telemetry. That is the ability to, that's what's happening here, control from one system. Basically, if you've seen Ready Player One, I'll go to this slide, then this is not the most false thing. The only thing wrong about this is that it's all the humans in a warehouse with the VR headsets on. In reality, what it's gonna look like is a ton of robots in a warehouse with little setup demo spaces, and then all across India and Philippines, people at home with their VR headsets tapping into these robots and then completing the tasks. So all that data is worth $50 to $100 an hour. So there's a very, very large arbitrage there. You know, you'll get roughly 18 hours out of a bot with 6 hours of charging. It can be making up to 2,000 a day per bot. For our single arm robot, that means there's going to be a return in 9-10 days. So then, of course, that really decreases the overall cost of deployment for these bigger chains. We're going to be looking at decreasing their CapEx as much as possible. And then we'll get into another interesting kind of concept, and then we'll dive into questions here. We're gonna take this bot and go out in Dorado and go knock on people's doors with it and have it talk to them and try to sell itself. It's a really interesting thing. is that legal? Can a robot be its own salesperson and just roam and start having conversations? This is such a wild, wild west space, the regulation doesn't exist. We have an AI czar, we didn't get a robotics czar, we don't have a robotics council. So just more kind of pieces that show just how early this market is. I think it'll go viral as well, I'm excited about that. I think like robots doing new tasks right now is almost like collective humanity watching a baby getting born. Whenever your baby does that one first thing, you're like, oh, cool, and you film it. And I think that's just gonna happen on the world stage here as we just do interesting things with these droids. So I think a techno union for America is going to come. That's a reference to Star Wars, if you guys haven't seen that. Obviously we love Star Wars, we're called Open Droids. And Techno Union is one of the big kind of federations there who controls the planet. They have an entire planet dedicated to an automated droid factory in Star Wars. So we're moving into more of a sci-fi world, and so we like playing on that art imitates life thing. Now I'm happy to take, boom, you're fast.
Does the robot do the Trump dance?
Let's find out.
That might get you some federal funding. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I was just in DC, and a couple of people from Department of Defense want the bots to go do bomb diffusion stuff. It's pretty interesting.
That is important. Firefighting is also.
Yeah. Security for your house. We hold a gun sometime.
Hey, Jack, I don't want to throw any cold water. How do we prevent this thing from going iRobot? How do we prevent this thing from going iRobot or Terminator on it? Like Isaac Asimov's 3 laws, you know, how do you implement that?
Yeah, that's actually like, fundamentally, I didn't dive into my why. I'll do that more tomorrow. Have my speech when I focus on our company and how we're approaching it. I do think robots are just going to play a big role in the future of humanity itself, and I don't want one centralized point of failure. You know, there's the all hail plankton in the SpongeBob movie where they all kind of control the people. You don't want Tesla to be able to send up one update to every single robot and for some bad software to be able to update it all. That's why we are open droids and not going to be like OpenAI where it becomes closed. And that means open source on the software side. Meaning an individual has the capability to choose whichever operating system he wants. Developers can build on top of this, and they can kind of deploy their own private software. What that means is we relinquish the control from being able to do a force update on all the hardware, meaning we're building a skill net rather than a Skynet. We definitely don't want that. Any other questions?
Can I be a beta tester?
Yes.
Are you tokenizing any part of your program? I know you're on the field testing now. Are you planning to tokenize maybe the API or the open droid ecosystem?
No, there's someone who is buying one of our bots in order to make it like the first embodied AI agent. You know, they're just gonna have a talking live stream and probably do funny stuff with it. We haven't decided to tokenize any specific part of the company though. But an interesting idea.
What would you say fundamentally differentiates
This question was, what differentiates us from competition? Again, going to dive much deeper into that tomorrow when I do company focus. But I would say, you know, this is a minimum viable robot. First principle is not reinventing the wheel. And we're actually focusing on looking at the bottlenecks in manufacturing scale, which I've talked to all the other companies, and surprisingly, that's not really their basis, is trying to like win it all. So vision alone is a moat, but also our speed, and you'll start seeing more viral stuff from the company probably. If you go on WhatsApp and on the GIF keyboard, or you go on any social media platform in the world, you type in bot, right now you'll see we're #1 all over there. So we're already starting to dominate the market, the meme market. Any other questions? How am I on time? Oh, got 5 minutes here, so. Now question back. Oh, right there.
Do you know how much the mobile robot base costs compared to the torso and arms? Just curious, like, if there's a percentage breakdown.
Yeah, so base itself, there's different base models. It's actually very surprising to dive into that market. Ashish flew out to Shenzhen and he met every robotics manufacturer out there, and we were like, why is no one doing a much cheaper chassis without LiDAR? And it's because computer vision just got good enough to not need the LiDAR. So we went and basically put together the bot from the best we could do today. And we're gonna have much lower cost models that don't have the expensive chassis. The chassis is $6,000. Any other questions? Now questions back to you guys. I think the screen's off, but the question is, now, same question we started with, how many of you think you will have a robot in your house in the next few years? There we go. We added some hands. I'd love to see it. So.
I don't know if I heard it earlier, but what's the battery life? Because you have to plug in now. What's the battery life behind?
Yeah, that's actually not, it's not plugged in. That's the Ethernet linking to this teleoperation kit, because it's not the VR model. The battery life, I believe, is 6 hours with full use.
So it has a docking station or when it
Yeah, it does automatically return to charger when it runs out. So you can get 18 hours of use for a day. It'll do 6 hours of charging if it's working a full day.
And what about like the safety aspect? If you use it, say if you're not home, somebody breaks into your house, you're gonna go police. I don't know, police know these things.
Yeah, there's just such a diverse range of tasks and activities that I think people are going to use this thing for. That's one of the reasons we also think open source is a winning bet, not just on having a strong why and saying, let's create a more safe future, but allowing other developers to kind of build their apps and their skills on top of that. I think is going to be like a very awesome thing, because that is definitely one task that people want to do.
What are some of the limitations you're seeing with this current MVP that you'd like to see in the future?
I do think the biggest thing that I don't like is the cost, and that cost reduction is on the way. We have prototypes in the works that cost us a few $1,000s. You know, we launched the largest X Prize for robotics, and so have over 1,000 different roboticists in India who submitted these lower cost bill of materials with more 3D printed parts, removing the LiDAR, since it's lighter arms, and we allowed going lower payload. Again, since Shenzhen and the whole robotics market focused on industrial use cases, they're millimeter precise, repeatable on the actions. I can show you that. But the precision is unnecessary for the household and domestic and retail tasks, and as well as the payload. It's unnecessarily high.
Does this robot clean my house to take the place of my housekeeper?
For laundry, dishes, yes, I think that's what we're deploying next. Just got this unit, getting VR teleoperation set up. We're doing a bagel shop demo 1st of March, and so it's hammering in all of the different tasks and finding the limitations is one of the next steps. But dishes, laundry is what we were first testing, and that's a yes. I think
really quick, I'm looking at the mobility of this slow. So is there going to be an update or an upgrade to make this thing move faster?
Yeah, I think the speed of the arm is actually very fast if you want to reconnect Sam and show how quick it can go. It's definitely slower than a human doing the job. But yeah, there you can see it's like the operators will get better and better. And it's, I think, similar to autonomous driving is what we'll see with robotics too, where first you get cruise control and it's like semi-autonomous and the human loops in only at the most difficult tasks, which then heavily decreases the amount of human use case you need, because essentially one human would only tap into each bot as necessary. And the other nice part is that it's working overnight, so even if it has to take some amount of hours to do certain tasks, I think you're gonna have more than enough hours of robotic use to do keeping your house tidy, unless you're just throwing parties all day. And, all right, yeah, so just to repeat, I don't know if we can throw the slide up real quick. I just want to repeat the main takeaways of, 99.9% of people, I think, don't get how quickly robotics is coming. I think 99.9% of people don't realize just how big that market is going to be. That's what I hope I kind of pushed on you here. Also, my call to action, my request, from the company point of view, we're trying to lock in all the partnerships that we can, from a hospitality chain, restaurant chain, retail chain, PE firms that own large interest in these, and country managers, city managers, and even if you know superstar team members, we're continuing to add superstars. So if anyone wants to scan that and has those relationships, that's my phone number. It's for WhatsApp. We'd love to get a text. We'd love to get connected and answer any future questions that you might have. Yeah, booth is outside as well. Team's going to be there. Also there to answer questions too.
Thank you.
Briefly tomorrow, first I'll dive more company specific kind of talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. So.